Okay, this is our study guide number 1 for Algebra 2, test number 1, doing lessons 1, 1, and 1, 2. Lessons 1, 1 to 1, 2. First one has a multiple choice problem. It says, which number does not equal 27 over 30? Okay, so we have to see 27 over 30. Number 3 goes into both of those. 3 times 9 is 27, and 3 times 10 is 30. So this one checks out. This one's good. Now, from this part, 9/10, we could see that that means 9/10. We know that's the 10th place, so that one checks out. And then this is 9 out of 10, and if you added a 0 to both of them, it would be 90 out of 100, which is 90%. So this one checks out. So the only one that doesn't work is B, 0.27. Number 2 says, which percent equals 0.69? Well, if we were making percentages into something that we could, if you change 69% to 0.69, that's how we would do it if we multiply for the simple interest problems or something like that. So to go the other way, all you got to do is go from 0.69, just move it to the right 2 times, and it gives you 69%, which is 8. Number 3 says the sales tax in one state's 9%. What's the amount of tax on a $30.95 purchase? So anytime you're talking about percent change, anytime you're talking about percent, you multiply it by 9%, but you can't multiply it by 9. You have to multiply it by 9, and a decimal follows it. You have to move it just like on the last one, but backwards. You move it 2 times, and it gives you 0.09. So we're going to multiply 3095 times 0.09. So 9 times 5 is 45. 9 times 9 is 81 plus 4 is 85. 9 times 0 is 0 plus 8 is 8. And 9 times 3 is 27. So we have, I don't know why I wrote that decimal in there, but we have to move the decimal 1 2 times, 3 4 times. So from here, 1 2 3 4, 2.7, and then this says 8.5, which means we have to round up because it's a 5. We have to round 8 up to 2.79. So your tax in this case would be $2.79. 3 says simplify 7/8 plus 1/6. Anytime you add in fractions or subtracting, they got to have the same common denominator. The smallest number that both of these go into is the number 24. Again, if you use the wrong number, if you use one that's too big, as long as they both go into it, it'll be fine. You're just going to have to simplify it at the end. So you have to ask yourself, what do I have to multiply this bottom or this denominator by to get 24? The answer is 3. So I change the top number by multiplying it by the same 3. 7 times 3 is 21. Do the same thing with the other side. What do I multiply 6 by to get 24? The number's 4, so I multiply the numerator by the same 4. 4 times 1 is 4. So now we have 21 over 24 plus 4 over 24. Keep your common denominator the same, 24, and add 21 plus 4 and get 25. There's no term that goes into both of those to simplify it, so even though it is improper, 24 over 25 is correct. 5 says -2 plus -3. That just acts, anytime you have plus and negative, it acts just like minus. But we have the same term, so add them up, 2 plus 3, and you get the number 5. And they're both negative, so we're going to keep it negative. It doesn't act like multiplication and division where when you have the same sign, it becomes positive. This case, if you have to think of a number line like we did earlier in the week, you start off at -2, and then it says -3. You go to the minus side, you got to move 1, 2, 3 more times. 6 says -8 times -4. Now it's a negative times a negative, so it's going to come out to be a positive. So we're going to have a positive 8 times 4 is 32. 7 says -25 divided by 5. Opposite terms. One's positive, one's negative, so it's going to come out to be negative. -25 divided by 5 is -5. 8 says to divide these fractions. 2 over 3 divided by 3 over 6. 2 over 3 divided by 3 over 6. Anytime you divide fractions, flip it and multiply by the reciprocal. Flip the second one. So 2 over 3 times 6 over 3. Go straight across with it. 2 times 6, you get the number 12. 3 times 3, you get 9. Then the number 3 goes into both of these. 3 times 4 is 12, and 3 times 3 is 9. It's a simplified fraction. 1/7 divided by 9 over 21. Again, flip it and multiply by the reciprocal. 1/7. Division becomes multiplication. 9 over 21 becomes 21 over 9. There's a shortcut right here you can help yourself with it, or you can multiply straight across. But if you notice that the number 7 goes into both of these, 7 times 1 is 7, and 7 times 3 is 21. Now you have smaller numbers to deal with. 1 times 3 is the number 3, and 1 times 9 is 9. Then simplify it. The number 3 goes into both. 3 times 1 is 3, and 3 times 3 is 9. 10 says write 336 miles in 11.2 hours as a rate in simplest form. Well, rate is just like speed. Remember, rate is distance over time. So you have a distance, 336 miles, and you have a time, 11.2 hours. Okay, so we have 336 miles divided by 11.2 hours. When you divide 336 by 11, you get the number 30. We don't do anything to cancel out miles over hours, so it stays as miles per hour. So your rate in simplest form, 30 miles per hour. Number 11 says solve T equals V over Q. Solve, when it says 4Q, anytime you see something like that, 4Q, it means get Q by itself. So you have T equals V over Q to start. You have to use inverse operations to get Q by itself. V divided by Q, you undo that by multiplying by Q. You do the same thing on the left side. Q times T is QT equals V. So that's solved for V, but we're not looking for that. We're looking for Q. So you got to do one more step. Now it says Q times T, undo times T by dividing by T. If you divide the left, divide the right. These will cancel and leave you with just Q. That's what you were looking for, equals V over T. You solved for Q. 12 says evaluate y equals x plus 2 times x minus 5 when x's value is 6. So in both of those places, we're going to plug in 6. Y equals 6 plus 2 times 6 minus 5. You do what's inside parentheses first. 6 plus 2 is 8. And 6 minus 5 is 1. Y equals 8 times 1. Y's value in this case is 8. 13 says negative 2 times x plus 11 equals negative 2x minus 22. We're naming the property. So right here, all you do for this one is you multiply negative 2 times x and negative 2 times 11. So what you did in that case is you distributed. That's the distributive property. 2 times square root of 8 times 7 equals 2 times the square root of 8 times 7. Notice none of the orders changed. The only thing that changed is where the parentheses were. What happened was what was associated first got changed, so that's the associative property. And since it's of multiplication, it's of multiplication. If it was of addition, you would do the same thing. You would just say of addition. 15 says pi times 6 equals 6 times pi. The order of the things changed. They commuted from one side or one spot to the other, so that's the commutative property of multiplication. 16 says negative 6 plus 6 equals 0. It goes, think about what it was to start and what it is to end. If it cancels it out, which it does in this case, then it's the inverse operation. People get inverse operation or inverse property of addition would be better to write, I guess. If it, like I said, if it changes from what it is to 0. Notice number 17. What is it at the beginning? Negative 2.5. And what is it at the end? It's the same negative 2.5. So that stays the same. It keeps its identity. So that's the identity property. of addition. 18 says 5a plus 5b when a is negative 6 and b is negative 5. In place of a, 5 times negative 6 plus 5 times b's value is negative 5. You do multiplication before you do addition. 5 times negative 6 is negative 30. 5 times negative 5 is negative 25. You wind up with negative 30 minus 25, or negative 55 is the simplified version. 4 times 3h minus 6 over 1 plus h, with h's value is negative 2. So you're left with 4 times 3 times h, which is negative 2, minus 6, over 1 plus negative 2. Do the innermost ones first. 3 times negative 2 is negative 6. Still minus 6, still times 4, over 1 plus negative 2. Do its inside parentheses again. Negative 6 minus 6 is negative 12. Still multiplying by 4. 1 plus a negative 2 is the same thing as 1 minus 2, which is negative 1. 4 times negative 12 is negative 48. So now you have negative 48 divided by negative 1, and a negative divided by a negative, to simplify, is a positive 48. Positive 48 for number 19. 20 says negative x squared minus 4x minus 4 when x is negative 3. So again, in place of x, we're going to plug in negative 3. You already have a negative up front. You're putting in another negative for the negative 3. It's squared minus 4 times negative 3 minus 4. So do its inside parentheses first. There's nothing we could do to change the negative 3s. We got to do exponents next. Negative 3 times negative 3 is a positive 9. Bring down your negative in front of it. And bring the rest of it down. Now do multiplication. Negative times a negative. 4 times 3 is 12, positive. So we have negative 9 plus 12 minus 4. Now add from left to right. Negative 9 plus 12 is 3, and 3 minus 4 is negative 1. And then the last one, number 21, says negative 2x to the third power minus x squared plus 5x plus 2 when x's value is negative 3. So in place of all of the x's, we're going to plug in negative 3. So now we have negative 2 times negative 3 cubed minus, now you have the minus first and then negative 3, just like before, squared, plus 5 times negative 3 plus 2. Do all of your exponents first. Negative 3 to the third power is negative 3 times negative 3 times negative 3. So negative 3 times negative 3 is positive 9, and positive 9 times negative 3 is negative 27. The next part says negative 3 squared. So now we have negative 3 times negative 3, which is a positive 9. So we bring down a positive 9, but you have to bring down the minus that's in front of it. And then the next x doesn't have any exponents at all, so we'll bring it straight down. Plus 5 times negative 3 plus 2. Do all your multiplication on this next step. Negative 2 times negative 27. Negative times a negative is a positive 54. Minus 9, positive 5 times negative 3 is negative 15. Plus 2. Now do all your addition and subtraction together. 54 minus 9 is going to be 45. 45 minus 15 is going to be 30. And 30 plus 2 is going to finish up simplified at 32.